Hi, Tian. So I went to the library yesterday and I got a whole bunch of new books. But I thought we'd start with this one, and it's called Yikes Vikings. And this is about Canadian Flyer. So you remember in the last series we read, it was a magic treehouse. Well, in this one, it's a magic red sled. And so you don't have sledding in Cambodia, so I thought I would show you this. It's just a short little movie, and there's the snow, and he's coming down the mountain in the snow, and he's on a sled. Actually, the video doesn't seem to want to work right. Oh, there he goes. See? Whoa! And all the kids have snowsuits on. There they go. There must be a little bump in the snow. So anyway, it's lots of fun, and it's something that we did lots when your dad was young. Okay, so this one is Yikes Vikings. And Vikings were warriors that came from Norway. And there's their ship, the Viking ship. Okay. So we have two kids here, just like we did Annie and Jack, only this time we have Emily and Matt. How it all began. Emily and Matt couldn't believe their luck. They discovered an old dresser full of strange objects in the tower of Emily's house. They also found a note from Emily's great aunt Miranda. The sled is yours. Fly it to wonderful adventures. They found a sled right behind the dresser. When they sat on it, shimmery gold words appeared. Rub the leaf 3 times fast, soon you'll fly to the past. And there's the sled right there. The sled rose over Emily's house. It flew over their town of Glenwood. It sailed out of a cloud and into the past. Their adventures on the flying sled had begun. Where will the sled take them next? Turn the page to find out. So, chapter 1, Knock. And this is Viking Vinland, the year 1001. Knock. Knock, knock. Emily opened her eyes. She glanced at her clock. It was 9. Her mum hated it when she slept late, even on Saturday. Knock, knock. I'll be up soon, Mom, she called. It's not your mom, answered Matt from the other side of the door. Come on, Em, get up. Go away, it's too early. Emily turned over and pulled the quilt over her head. But I know where we should go on our next adventure. It'll be awesome. I haven't brushed my teeth. I haven't combed my hair. I'm not even out of bed, grumbled Emily. I'll wait downstairs until you're ready, replied Matt. Your mom just baked blueberry muffins. She said I could have some. So I don't know, they're friends, Matt and Emily. Emily sighed. It was no use trying to sleep. She was wide awake now. She kicked off the covers and sat up. Those muffins smelled sweet and buttery. Emily slid out of bed. She brushed her teeth and hair and slipped into her jeans and red t-shirt. Then she ran down to join Matt in the kitchen. Hi, Em, he mumbled, his mouth full of muffin. His lips were blue. These are great. I've had 3 already. Where's my mom? Asked Emily. She helped herself to a muffin and a glass of milk. She's in the backyard. Emily sat across from Matt at the kitchen table. So where do you want to go? She asked. To meet Leif Erikson in Vinland, said Matt. I saw an old cap labeled Viking Vinland 1001 in the dresser before our last adventure. And Eric Swenson, who's in my class, told us that Leif and the Vikings were the first Europeans to discover North America, even before Christopher Columbus. Emily's eyes lit up. I love Vikings. They sailed on ships with scary dragons carved in front and they wore big pointy helmets with horns. Emily grabbed a paper napkin and drew a tall Viking on a ship. Eric and Vikings never wore helmets with horns. He doesn't know that for sure, said Emily. He didn't go to Viking times, but we can, and if Vikings wore those crazy helmets, I'm going to try one on. Chapter 2. Into the Woods. Matt led the way up the rickety stairs to the tower. As soon as he pushed the door open, he rushed over to the dresser and opened the top drawer. Here it is, Matt showed Emily the old cap with the label. So what are we waiting for, said Emily. Let's go sailing. Matt saluted. Aye, aye, sir. Matt slipped the cap back in the drawer. He and Emily hopped on the sled. Immediately, shimmery gold words appeared around the maple leaf painted on the front of the Canadian flyer. Rub the leaf 3 times fast, soon you'll fly to the past. Matt rubbed the leaf and a thick fog enveloped them. When it lifted, they were flying. Look at our clothes, said Matt as they sailed out of a cloud. We look like Vikings already. They each wore a belted tunic top, loose pants, leather shoes that looked like slippers, and a cap like the one they found in the dresser. But we don't have any helmets with horns yet, said Emily. I have my sketchbook, though. She patted a leather pouch at her waist. My digital recorder's here too, said Matt, peeking inside his pouch. The sled flew down toward a long sandy beach surrounded by woods. That must be Vinland, shouted Matt. But where are the Vikings and their ship? Maybe they're exploring nearby, said Emily as they landed. Emily and Matt stood up and looked around. Waves rolled toward the shore. Seagulls squawked overhead. But there were no people anywhere. Let's look in the woods, suggested Matt. We can leave the sled behind this big rock. We won't go far. Matt peered into the forest. There might be a clearing where the Vikings built houses, or they might be hunting for food. There they are, in their Viking clothes. Do they hunt with bows and arrows? Asked Emily. Yes, and spears, said Matt. Let's talk loudly so they don't accidentally hunt us. They walked into the woods. Hello, called Matt. Don't shoot, we're kids, said Emily. Insects buzzed and birds chattered, but there were no people anywhere. The deeper they walked into the forest, the closer the trees grew. The forest grew darker and darker. They could barely see. Matt tripped on a tree root. Ouch, he cried. Are you all right? Asked Emily. I'm okay, but let's get out of here. These woods are creepy. They ran out of the woods toward the sunlit beach. Yahoo, sun, sang Matt, but no Vikings. Emily flopped down against a log on the beach beside the rock where they'd left the sled. Matt sat beside her. He turned on his recorder. This is Matt reporting from I don't know where. All I know is that Emily and I are looking for Leif Erikson and his Vikings in Vinland in the year 1001. But there are no Vikings here. Where are they? Where are we? What year is it? What do we do now? Asked Emily. I don't know, said Matt, shutting his recorder off. Maybe the sled dumped us in the wrong place, or maybe it's the wrong year. Maybe we should try to go home. Matt sighed. Let's wait a little longer, he said. Emily looked back at the woods. She looked out to sea. They saw no one. They were alone. So what happens is they get on this magic sled, this magic red sled here, and they say those words that we read over here, and it takes them to where they asked to go. See these words here? Rub the leaf 3 times fast, soon you'll fly to the past. That's what that says here. Chapter 3, Discovered. Who are you? Matt opened his eyes. Emily was still asleep. They'd both fallen asleep on the beach. A tall, bearded man stood over them. Behind him stood 4 other men. They wore tunics, loose pants, cloaks fastened with silver brooches, caps and leather shoes. A dagger hung from each man's belt, and a dagger is a knife. Yikes, thought Matt. They must be Vikings. Matt glanced down at the beach. A little boat was pulled up on land, and a Viking ship bobbed up and down in the bay. Wake up, Emily, Matt nudged her. She opened her eyes and stared at the men. I am Leif Erikson, said the tall man. Answer me. Who are you, and what are you doing here? Even though Leif Erikson must have been speaking a Norse language, Matt could understand him. I'm Matt, and this is Emily, he stammered. Now that the famous Viking was standing beside them, Matt's tongue felt as if it were glued to the roof of his mouth. Speak up, demanded Leif Erikson. His eyes bored right through Matt, as if he could read his thoughts. And what is that? Leif pointed to the sled. It's, Matt mumbled. It's a flying sled, Emily blurted out. Matt stared at her in horror. Are you telling me that this piece of wood flies like a bird, said Leif. Yes, said Emily. We're from the future, and it's a magic sled. It flew us here. Emily, said Matt under his breath, what are you saying? I couldn't think of anything else, whispered Emily. Matt waited for Leif Erikson to yell at them and call them liars, but Leif's face crinkled into a big smile, and he roared with laughter. This is the best tale I have heard since we left Greenland, he said. Now tell me the truth. I am sure your family heard Joffasson's stories just as we did. We don't know anyone called Bjarni, said Emily. Nonsense, boomed Leif. How else would you have known of this place? Bjarni told many people that he sighted new land when his ship blew off course. Is this Vinland? Asked Matt. This place has no name. We have just landed here. Where is your family? Home, said Emily. I see, said Leif, stroking his beard. Were you playing in the woods? Did their ship sail without you? Matt looked at Emily. She shrugged. She couldn't think of anything either. I see you are frightened. But what do I do with you now? This land has fine timber, but it is only the second place Bjarni described. We are sailing on to more fertile land. We are leaving now. And there he is. There's Leif Erikson. And he looks pretty fierce, right? So his hair probably would have been reddish. And his hair is quite long. And you see there's his dagger right there. Chapter 4. Who's afraid of dragons? Can we come with you? Asked Emily. We can help on your ship. Help, said Leif Erikson, laughing. Can you fish, cook, clean? I can fish, said Emily. It was sort of true. Emily had gone fishing twice, although all she'd caught was a bunch of weeds. I can cook, said Matt. It was almost true. He'd made scrambled eggs once, although they were so dry that no one ate them. But he'd tried. I see, said Leif. Our ship is crowded enough already, grunted one of the Vikings. Gunnar is right, said Leif, turning to the Viking behind him. Gunnar was as tall as Leif, with shoulders as wide as a football player. We're not big, said Emily. We don't take up much room. Leif Erikson laughed. They speak the truth, Gunnar. They are not big, and they tell good tales. It would be cruel to leave them in this deserted place. He looked sternly at Emily and Matt. If we take you with us, you will work. Understood? Matt and Emily nodded. And bring your flying wood, growled Gunnar, pointing to the sled. It will be useful. Useful? Said Emily. Why? Emily didn't like the way Gunnar was flying the sled as if it belonged to him. Enough questions, grunted Gunnar as they piled into the small boat. They pushed off from shore. I bet the next place is Vinland, Matt whispered to Emily. Why do you whisper? Barked Gunnar. What is this place called Vinland? Matt cleared his throat. He couldn't explain that he knew about Vinland from the future. I heard there's a land close by that has vines full of grapes. He stammered. You children are full of stories, said Leif, laughing. But grapes? I think not. Emily and Matt gaped as they rowed closer and closer to the Viking ship. It was wider than they had imagined. It had a big square sail, a single mast, and a large steering oar in the stern, but no carved dragons. There's the big ship right there, if you can see it, right there. And then this is the small boat, because they can't land this on the beach, so what they do is they take a small boat and land and then leave the big boat out in deeper water. Where? And there's the sails up here. But they're rolled up right now, they're not down. Where are the dragons, Emily asked. This is a Nor, a trading ship, said Leif. There are only dragons on warships. Are you frightened of dragons? No, said Emily. There are no such things. Are you sure? Asked Leif, raising his eyebrows. Perhaps there are dragons in the next land. And if there are you brave enough to face them? I've faced dinosaurs, said Emily. Dragons can't be any scarier than a T-Rex. You should have seen its teeth. T-Rex? Dinosaurs? I know nothing of such creatures, Leif said. But we will soon see if you are brave. We will soon see if you are true Vikings. So maybe we can just do one more chapter. Chapter 5, A Gift from the Sea. Hurry, get on board, Gunnar, ordered Emily and Matt. We have no time to waste. Gunnar scowled at them as if they were smelly fish. Here, a gray-haired sailor who stood on the deck of the Viking ship held out his hand to help Emily aboard. I am Tyrkir, he said as he hoisted Emily and the sled over the rail. I'm Emily, thanks. Now you, said Gunnar, giving Matt a sharp shove. Or are you too weak to climb in yourself? I can manage, Matt muttered. He grabbed the side of the rail and tried to yank himself up. But his hand slipped and he fell back on top of Gunnar. You stupid oaf, yelled the burly Viking. Sorry, said Matt. Get off my stomach, said Gunnar, and out of my sight. Matt grabbed the side of the rail again. With all his might, he pulled himself up. He got one foot over the rail, but just as he lifted his other foot, a seagull pooped on his cap. Oh no, he groaned. A gift from the sea. Tyrkir said Tyrkir. Matt didn't laugh. Leif and the other Vikings stepped aboard while Matt rubbed his cap against the wet wood on the side of the ship. Some of the poop fell off, but his cap still felt slimy. Did you get it all? Asked Emily. Yes, but now my cap's so cold and wet that I can't wear it. Enough talk, grunted Gunnar. You are lucky to be here at all. Gunnar glared at them and stomped away. Look, Emily pointed to 30 or more Vikings on the ship. No one's wearing a helmet with horns. I told you, Eric said they didn't, said Matt. Maybe they will later, said Emily. Maybe they wear helmets like that on special occasions. Leif strode to the steering oar. Onward, he commanded. Vikings manned rows of oars. The Nor began to move. Come, said Tyrkir to Emily and Matt. You will help me clean fish. We have just caught some. Emily and Matt followed Tyrkir to the bow of the ship. A pile of glistening fish lay in a hole just below the deck. Some of the fish were dead, but some still wiggled. Ty Kier handed fish to Matt and Emily. Matt's stomach heaved. He didn't want to stick his hands into fish guts. The expression of disgust on Emily's face told him she didn't want to clean fish either. Watch me, said Ty Kier. He showed them how to slice into a fish, clean off its scales, scrape its inside, and throw the unused parts to the seagulls. Now you, he said, handing Emily and Matt sharp knives. But take care, do not slice your fingers. Emily and Matt took deep breaths as they worked. It was hard not to throw up. The rolling motion of the ship made their stomachs feel even worse. Remember how we couldn't wait to sail on a Viking ship? Matt whispered to Emily. I've changed my mind. If I clean one more fish, I'll barf, said Emily. Only 10 more, said Ty Kier, hurrying over. He patted them both on the back. Only 10 more, groaned Matt. I can't, moaned Emily. You must, said Ty Kier. It is your job, and we must hurry. We will anchor before dark and cook fish on shore. It will be a great feast. And we'll leave it there. So, chapter 6 is where we'll go tomorrow. So it's another book, and it's a Canadian, so it has more Canadian adventures. And since you're part Canadian, I thought it was important that we do some of this too. So I hope you had a great day and lots of fun with friends. Some schoolwork, some lessons, maybe some math, adding, subtracting, multiplying. Maybe helped your dad make dinner or helped your mom in her store. Lots of hugs, and we'll talk later.